Hey. Thank you, everyone. We're going to our next presentation from Ashley Burns about George Washington Carver, and I think you'll all see her obvious passion for this project. Good luck.
Right. Hi, everyone. Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Ashley Burns, and I am a biology major at Missouri Southern State University in Joplin. I'm kind of the odd fellow out studying biology. Don't ask me about law. I've been really enjoying my time here, learning a lot, and learning through leadership, which is what I've decided to entitle my presentation and my program that I will take back to my community, because I've learned a lot through leadership of George Washington while I've been here against the beautiful backdrop of Mount Vernon. And so I think it's an awesome idea to take that back to where I work at George Washington Carver National Monument, and I work at his childhood home, so I'd like to empower youth through his leadership. It's kind of stealing your idea. My journey with the National Park Service began when I was 9 years old, and I honestly would not be where I am today if I hadn't started volunteering with my dad as a way to spend quality time together and give back to the environment. And we did this over several hundred hours of volunteer work. I've gained a lot of skills from doing trail and stream maintenance, working really closely with the Junior Ranger program and the special events. And I've learned interpretive skills, which is what I do now as a paid employee, which I got the job just over a year ago. So it's been a wonderful ride with the National Park Service. But as a volunteer, it taught me public speaking. Of course, those interpretive skills I use every day now. And knowledge of local history and landscape. So it's really shaped my leadership and my personality and everything. So it's been incredible. And so I'd love to tell you a little bit more about George Washington Carver himself. I'm sure, like here, you've had to kind of distinguish and dispute some facts about George Washington. I have to tell everyone every day that I work that, unfortunately, George Washington Carver did not invent peanut butter. As everyone thinks, because of the Proud family and because of numerous websites that say best known as the inventor of peanut butter, but he did many incredible things. He was a humanitarian, a scientist, an educator, an inventor, an artist. The list goes on and on and on. I could talk seriously all day, but I won't, I promise. And also, of course, he was known as the plant doctor and the peanut man for his many inventions. And so the park that I work at, and as many of you hopefully have heard of the 2016 centennial of the National Park Service and our Find Your Park campaign, I have truly found my park at George Washington Carver National Monument, which is one of the 412 national park units across the country. And so this park is very worthy of being designated as a national monument because it's very unique, like the other 411. But this one is very historically significant because it's the first national park unit dedicated to anyone other than a United States president, as well as the first national park unit dedicated to honor an African American. Many people don't know that or realize that. It's tucked away in rural Diamond, Missouri, but it's truly a gem. So our 240-acre park, there we see about 40,000 visitors a year. And we're just one little unit of the National Park Service that contributes, I think, a great story. And that's why I'm here to, of course, go on to a career in the National Park Service. And I'd love to stay at George Washington Carver forever because I love his story. But I will branch out and do other things. But this place has inspired me. So when I became an employee in 2015, I gained a totally new perspective on the National Park Service, of course. It's immense. Like I was saying, 412 national park units covering over 84 million acres of land, and there are national parks in every single state and Puerto Rico. We see about 293 million visitors per year, National Park Service wide. And of course, like I said, about the 40,000 just George Washington Carver brings in the Midwest region. That 293 million is fantastic since the population of the United States is around 320 million, so that's really cool. But National Park Service-wide, of course, working there, I've seen, we've identified a problem with diversity. There are, people and groups of people that we're not reaching that we really want to be reaching. And of course, like you guys understand at Mount Vernon, trying to create new ways to engage diverse groups and youth is very important, and we're just always reaching to be better. And of course, each park is a resource for education and history, and the National Park Service mission is to preserve and protect these historical, cultural, and natural resources and places for the future enjoyment, education, and inspiration of this and future generations. And so the problems with the National Park Service that we're facing, and what has definitely inspired my capstone and why I'm here today, is an article called "Why Are Our Parks So White?" From the New York Times. And when I read this, I was surprised. It says that 78% of national park visitors are white. So that leaves 22% being the minorities that visit national parks, while 37% make up the population. So we are wanting to bridge that gap between those populations to see more people and attract more people in the National Park Service. There are many reasons for this that we've identified, and I'm not going to solve the diversity problem overnight. So, I've come up with something to tackle just at my park and start, locally, which is very important. But of course, it won't be solved overnight. So something that really inspired me, actually with a talk with Sean Thomas weeks ago, that feels like months ago, right, guys? But that really resonated with me, something he said, and that was, sometimes when we're dealing with societal issues, the best thing we can do is make things a little bit better for everyone. So I realized I'm not going to come here and fix everything in the whole National Park Service, but I'd like to create a program that will really help, starting locally at my park, and hopefully we'll see over time these barriers being broken down and the National Park Service becoming a more welcoming and inclusive organization. So also in this Why Are Our Parks So White article, there were facts about the perception of unsafe environments and poor service National Park Service wide. So non-white, non-visitors, so minorities that had never even been in the National Park Service were 3 times more likely to say that the national parks were unsafe and provided poor service, and they never visited the national park. So this is a problem that we have, this perception. There are many reasons for it. Not even 100 years ago, and still truly today, it's not the most inclusive and accepting place statistically. So definitely want to work to change that as our country is, ever becoming increasingly more diverse. And so in 2014, from this article, it says that 80% of National Park Service employees were white. And we see that not only in the National Park Service, but among most environmental agencies. So it's not just our organization in particular, but of course that's what I'd love to focus on. And also many national parks are studying this problem through heritage tourism, and we're kind of tracking and talking to these different groups that we're not reaching about why, and why they aren't interested in coming to the national parks, or why they can't get out there. And so we've identified several problems, the unwelcoming atmosphere I talked about. We're working on inclusion and outreach, and we need to make the National Park Service more relevant to everyday Americans, because not only, like we talked about earlier in several other projects where diversity is a hot topic, diversifying your audience and people in the programs that I teach to, it offers a different perspective to have a diverse audience. So we're having, different perspectives during dialogue, and not just one opinion is being shared because the whole group looks exactly the same. So diversity is very important, and it contributes a whole lot to national parks. And also another big factor is, of course, with an 80% white and an 80% male Congress, of course they're supporting the national parks right now, but when Congress, hopefully in the future becomes more diversified, if the National Park Service isn't relevant to Congress, we're not going to be funded. And that's, of course, a huge issue in turn, not only to the National Park Service, I want a job next year and the year after that and for many years to come, but also in terms of the national economy, the National Park Service actually is really important. The Midwest region alone, which there are 6 regions in the National Park Service, but my park happens to be in the Midwest region. The Midwest region alone contributes $2 billion annually to the national economy. And so for every $1 of the federal government's money that is given to the national parks for a budget, the national parks revenue in return returns $10. So we actually are making, a good amount of revenue for the national economy. Without these attractions, if these places were to be taken away, which hopefully not, we've been around for 100 years, I want to be around for 100 more. But if they were to be taken away, that would have a massive impact on the economy, I believe, and statistics show. So this year, as I mentioned, with the National Park Service Centennial of 2016, it's very important for us to be working towards my goal and towards the whole National Park Service mission and upholding that mission. And I included this quote by John Muir, who was a huge national parks advocate before we were even established. And it says, "Everybody needs beauty as well as bread, places to play in and pray in, where nature may heal and give strength to body and soul alike." I love that quote. It just kind of shows they're important places that can really inspire, and they've inspired my life, and I believe that they can inspire others. So what can I do? Definitely start locally with my park, because I'm just one person, and over time I want to break down these barriers and be a leader in my career in the National Park Service. But of course that's not going to happen tomorrow or the next day. It's going to take many years. But actually, in a Capstone working lunch that we had, where we had a Capstone discussion session, one of my fellows, Kyle, gave me the wonderful idea, which became my whole project of my Capstone. Why don't you develop a leadership model based on George Washington Carver's values and virtues? And I loved it and ran with that. So thank you, Kyle. And all that collaboration has been wonderful. And also coupled with, the talk we had with Sean, it made so much sense. So I ran with it, as I do many things. So creating more programming, I knew that was something I was going to need to do, but came up with the idea here. So it was amazing. And focusing on youth for now, because there are a lot of course prejudices that we have. And so when you start with youth and you teach them that national parks are safe and they are a great place to go and they are a great educational resource, then hopefully, kids will raise their kids to love the national parks and become, volunteers for the national parks. But not only that, but volunteers in their communities in general. But these places specifically do provide a fantastic place where anyone can volunteer. Like when I was 9 years old, they let a little kid come in and volunteer, so that was great. And educate through my park's specific story, George Washington Carver's life and leadership. I have a lot of resources that I can use, at my hands when I go back home to the community. So I do plan on using them. And so I've created a curriculum-based education for 8th graders specifically. My mentor, Christine, I've worked with her to create this program, and she's been instrumental in that. And she recommended 8th graders. It's just a really good time to kind of empower them through leadership. And I totally agreed, and I remember being an 8th grader. I think it'll be awesome. Also, that's when they learn American history, so this is most relevant, George Washington Carver. And I did a survey just among my fellows, and no one said that they had learned about him in school. I went to school in Missouri, so of course we learned about him a little bit, and that was right there, 15 minutes away from the park. So of course that's something we teach, but I'd really like this for people to be more aware of him, because he very much was a leader, even though he wasn't necessarily regarded as one until his old age. But since I have a little bit of time, I will talk to you about him a little bit more, and the 3 stories that I'll use, the 3 examples of why he actually was a leader in my curriculum. So the first picture is him with a piece of his artwork. He was an artist, but he actually, we talk about George Washington giving up power several times. George Washington Carver gave up his deep passion for art to actually study agriculture so he could actually feed mouths and save lives, and that's incredible. He still used his passion for art to supplement him and inspire him, as well as not only teaching people, poor black farmers in the South, how to grow sustainable food and sustainable farming. He also supplemented their lives through the beauty of art, which is really cool. And in the middle, that's George Washington Carver with Henry Ford. He partnered with huge names at the time. And during World War II, when there was a short supply of rubber and other resources, George Carver and Henry Ford actually invented a car made out of plant-based materials. Of course, that didn't become commercialized. Our cars aren't necessarily made out of plants today. Like many of George Carver's inventions, you don't see them become commercialized. They were invented at that moment to save people's lives, which they ultimately did. And one of my favorite examples is the peanut milk experiment, which I teach on a regular basis and interpret that story. But basically, there were people in the Belgian Congo and Africa struggling to survive for many reasons. They depleted their crops, and they were being infected with sleeping sickness. And their livestock was very poor, their soil was poor. So missionaries found the people in the Belgian Congo, wrote the plant doctor, the great plant doctor, in Tuskegee, Alabama, and they asked him what they could do. He said, plant peanuts, make milk out of the peanuts. It's just so cool, to see that he came up with that. And unfortunately, it wasn't peanut butter, but it saved a lot of lives. So millions of people could live on because of his inventions. although they weren't commercialized. And some people might see that as a failure, but it was a huge, huge success during the time. And on the far right, he was huge on education. And he was a leader during that time because he never gave up despite being born into slavery. And just as slavery was being abolished, he was just an infant. And he was actually orphaned at an early age. He nearly died of whooping cough. And so he was raised by the slave owners of his mother as his mother was kidnapped and never returned to the farm. But he was raised by them, and he went on to accomplish incredible things at the age of 10, leaving where I work to walk 8 miles to get to the nearest African-American school for children. So he never gave up, and he faced some horrible things, but his story is one of my favorite parts about my job. I get to share that legacy that you can put your mind to, and you can do anything you put your mind to, which I love. So my objectives of my actual program will be, one, for students to recognize what makes a leader. So we're going to have, they're going to define a leader in the beginning. Then they're going to go through the program and actually, like the second objective, be able to define leadership qualities of George Washington Carver, and at the end, redefine what leadership means to them. And my third objective is that they'll be able to apply leadership to their own lives and become leaders in their own communities. And of course, since I work in interpretation, it's very important to address several learning styles. So the learning intelligences I'll address, try to address as many as possible: verbal, logical, visual, interpersonal, intrapersonal, through various activities, which I'm still kind of figuring out. So my overall mission of programming, I say this leadership program is designated to empower 8th graders through the understanding of leadership qualities and educate them about George Washington Carver's life and leadership. This program will illustrate how he was a leader and a trailblazer of his time, and how they can model after his virtues to become leaders in their communities. So this is specific towards my project, but my broader vision is for the National Park Service to ultimately be seen as a more inclusive and a not discriminatory organization. And my more narrow vision, I guess, and my goal is to see these kids in their communities be empowered, and to see them become more involved in their schools, and hopefully encourage higher academic achievement through that. So my program curriculum will involve universal concepts, some interpy stuff, like I like to call it. Just hitting on a few major ones. Of course, leadership being a universal concept. In every group, there's some sort of a leader, and so that's something that most people can understand. And of course, the idea of sacrifice, him sacrificing something he was really passionate about, but also still including that in his work, but doing something that he knew he could do that was more meaningful. And identity is also a huge one. And in the 8th grade, I'm sure we all can say we struggled with identity a little bit. So empowering those kids with their identity is also very important. And some leadership characteristics of George Washington Carver himself. We've talked about George Washington's leadership characteristics a lot and identified why they're important. So I'm going to identify Carver's leadership characteristics so that they have something tangible that they see, even if that's not their strength, we have identified leaders and see, why they're successful and kind of defining that. So, his motivation and strategy, and that George Carver was a mentor to other people, and just his different principles. We have a lot of fantastic resources, like I mentioned earlier. Carver's letters, we have a letter at our park that corresponds between Albert Einstein and Carver, so he truly was a leader of his time. He's just not so well known. And also, he wrote 8 cardinal virtues. He had writings and quotes himself that were very inspirational and original that we can use to empower these kids. And so some sample activities that I'm still working on. Of course, I talked about the before and after definitions of leadership. There are a lot of study questions that I've learned from this fantastic book called Fruits of Creation, a look at global sustainability through the lens of George Washington Carver, where they take his practices from the early 1900s and relate them to the struggles we're going through today with the environment. And of course, a lot of introspection about success and failure. Something we've learned here is that, leaders have flaws, but they're still leaders and they've done incredible things. So is a leader the action in that moment, or everything they've done, their principles leading up to that, kind of what defines the leader? A lot of questioning and answering and dialogue, which I think is that key in getting people to kind of understand each other and really talk about things that are bothering them or that they wonder about, and learning through that. And setting individual goals. One of the ideas that my mentor came up with is we can have a postcard, in 8th grade and have these individuals set goals for themselves. And then we can kind of track and see, and that can kind of be a short-term outcome of let's have them set a goal like we often did in high school and junior high. But we also want to partner with them and kind of track them, check up on them, see how they're doing, kind of give them ideas on how they can achieve their goal, and then see them achieve that goal. Like send us back the postcard to the park, write 2 or 3 sentences about how you achieve that short-term goal. Something as small as, I want to go out and volunteer for an hour, to I want to, create a club at my school. So anything like that. And then important aspect of my project is to have, I'm going to go into the classroom first. I'm not expecting them to come out to the park. It's very difficult for even schools that are an hour away. They might not ever get access to come to my park. But follow up with a visit to the site. Partner with the school. Make sure that the 8th grade class can come back to the site and see what they've been taught about in real life and be inspired by the awesome park we have. And so some outcomes, short term, I can get immediate feedback from the classroom right there. Are the kids engaged? Are they listening to me? Are they asking questions, raising their hands? Maybe a quiz. I don't know. Nobody likes quizzes. But students have learned, and have they learned about George Carver? And what do they know? And of course, long term, staying in contact with the teacher in the classroom. Where are they in 9th and 10th grade? What have they done? How have you seen kind of their involvement in school? And are the families coming out to the park after they've learned about it? Are they more likely to become involved with our park or outside volunteering? And so some things that still need to be done. When I get back, kind of my action plan, I need to contact local schools. I see my program hopefully before their Christmas break, entering the classroom and actually being able to complete this program in a classroom. But of course, I still need to contact, the people who are in charge of the curriculum to make sure it can fit in and where it would best fit in during their course of American history. And finish formally developing the formal interpretive program. We have a lot of paperwork. It's the government. It's fun. And pitching my idea to my supervisor and superintendent. I'll do that hopefully as immediately as I can when I get back to work the day after we get home. Of course, the other interpretive rangers who will hopefully take this program, and I'm not the only one doing it, but they're giving this program to schools too, because I'm very part-time. I work 1 day a week, and that is usually Saturday, so that is actually a challenge. I have identified I need to kind of find out what's a day I have off of school that elementary schools don't, and I need to kind of get that day reserved, or we need to figure that out. It might be something where I have to change up my schedule a little bit, but we'll definitely get it in there. And I say test run this during a summer junior ranger camp. We have kids that are already going to be coming, like a classroom full of about 8 to 12-year-olds, and so I'll have that. But like I said, I don't expect my audience to be already able to come to the park. I do want to get out there, get outside my park, and go to those classrooms, not expecting them to have to come to me. But I'd like to test run how it's received through the junior rangers. They're fantastic little hamsters, test gerbils. So I definitely plan to get this program into the classroom before the end of this semester. And I would just, defining success. Sorry, it didn't look like it changed. So, of course, short-term success, I see immediately, like as soon as I can, getting my program into the classroom, fall 2016. Like I said, engaged, listening, participating students. Are the classroom evaluations, with the teacher, are they liking it? Do they want me back? Hopefully. The classroom visit to the site being a success and something that the school can manage, or if we have to help them with that, we do have set amount for this year for, it's called a Ticket to Ride grant. So we do have a certain amount of money, I think $10,000 total originally awarded. I don't know how much of that is left, but grants to be able to transport schools down to our park. And of course, teachers wanting the program in the future and sustainability of it. Some ideas in the back of my mind that my mentor suggested is creating something that we can give to teachers so that they can replicate this, kind of like a webinar or a workshop that I give to teach actual educators so that they can teach these to the kids rather than me or the other interpretive rangers having to leave the park to go to these classrooms. And so keeping that a sustainable thing, and of course when I leave my job in 2 years, when I graduate college, 2.5, I don't know. But whenever I graduate, I will graduate one day, being able to say that that program thrived at my park and it wasn't, other rangers wanted to continue that on. So the last thing I wanted to leave you is with a quote. I almost can't see it, but it says, "How far you go in life depends on your being tender with the young, compassionate with the aged." And you can read the rest because I can't see it. I apologize. But that is one of Carver's biggest quotes about success. And I love what he has to say about it. By the end, you will have been one of all of these. So I just wanted to leave you with that thought. And I wanted to thank you so much for listening, and thank you to the Mount Vernon staff for bringing me here and having me learn. And I'm so honored to show you my project. And of course, thank you to my fellows for all the collaboration. And I really appreciate it. So does anybody have any questions? Ben. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's a really good question, and I had some leadership definitions. I'd say a leader on the spot. A leader is someone who is willing to collaborate, but also take charge and stand up for what they believe in, but also be willing to take into account the feelings and the thoughts of others. And there's several great leadership definitions that I had that I was going to bring into the classroom originally. Yeah, I'd say that collaboration is a big one. Thanks. Yes, Allison. Yeah, that's a great question. So a lot of other parks do have different interpretive programs like that. Of course, my park is technically a historical park, but we have a lot of other great components. We have the nature, culture, and historical components. So I believe that several parks already have programs like this. My particular park, parks that they more cater to what their park is about. But my park didn't have something like that. So when I heard that idea, I thought that'd be fantastic because it is something that is unique and fantastic for classrooms. But this idea in general, if other parks, hear about it and really like the idea, hopefully they could develop their own based on kind of the same idea to empower youth to be leaders in their communities, but they would just kind of have to make it original and more relevant to their park. Yes, Doug. That's a really good question. It will take time, for me to develop this, and it will take time out of my schedule and the other things I already, do at the park. I think they'll love it if they're watching this. I think they'll absolutely love it and receive it really well. I haven't talked to them a whole lot. I've talked to one of my coworkers, and she loves the idea. It's just kind of another thing on our plate, though, that if we're gonna take this on, and if other people are gonna do it besides me, it is time out of their busy schedules too, and I don't expect them to, immediately. But I think they'll really like the idea because we're always looking for ways to serve underserved school kid ages. And so I think it'll be received really well. It'll just be a matter of how frequent am I able to do it. Mm-hmm. We are associated really closely with the Carver Birthplace Association. So they're actually doing a historical project right now on the schoolhouse I talked about, the first school George Washington Carver attended. So they are their own association that raises money. As far as our budget, we have a fantastic budget for our national park specifically. The whole National Park Service, I think our budget is $3 billion, so we actually get a really good amount. And we are a fee-free park, so kind of allocating that budget is very unique. As far as outside contributors, we just have a donation box, and of course, with being the federal government, we can't, really have huge partnerships that give us a lot of money to do a specific thing. But it is something to look into as far as, looking into bringing this into schools and kind of being, I don't want it to be separate from the National Park Service, so that's why it's kind of hard, and we have to be careful about, raising funds outside. Any other questions? All right, well, thank you guys so much.